Well, anyway, we'll kick it off, eh? I'm Scott Green. I'm from Austin, Texas, and Jeff asked me to come and talk to the group about the Scrum tonight. While I'm in town to do one of the preseason Seawolf matches, and thanks for having me. I do appreciate it. I guess my first question to the group would be in terms of how comfortable are we with refereeing the Scrum? I know that, Crystal, you're relatively new. What about the old geezers, as Jeff called you?
I'm fairly comfortable. I played wing, but I've been doing quite a bit. The level I kind of usually get, most of them are pretty upright, and there's not too many shenanigans going on.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. How about you, Ben?
I think the bit that I have most trouble with is maybe like a school teams that are just not good at scrumming, and so the scrums keep just kind of falling down, or we're not engaging properly, and not so much kind of penalizing the scrum, more like just keeping the scrum in one piece so the ball can get out is what I'd like to learn more about how to do.
Okay, very good. And I can't see the last gentleman on the screen. Let me see. I can't seem to find him. There's one other. Ian. Jimmy. Oh, Jimmy.
Yeah. I'm retired. I coached referees, and I was an educator for 18 years.
Oh, great. Oh, very good. Okay. Well,
I'm just alive for the ride.
This presentation sort of goes from the very beginning, the very basics, and we sort of, and it can lead us to wherever we want to go tonight. There's only a few of us on the call, so we can go wherever the group wants to go. But I think maybe just to benefit everyone to start with, we'll just go through some basic stuff. It may bore the senior people in the group, but for the newer referees, they may get something out of it. So we'll start at the beginning, make our way through. Feel free to ask questions, and we'll just kick it off, eh? Yeah, I love that Scrum for so many reasons. Are you getting good, clear video through there?
We have good video. There's no sound. Is there supposed to be sound?
There should have been just like a little bit of sound there, just a little music background. I don't know why.
I don't know that we need it. That was such a beautiful picture.
Yeah, but I mean, the reason I put that in there is because, when it all happens right for us as a referee, and the players buy into what we're trying to do, we can have these great moments at the scrums. A lot of referees find the scrum quite intimidating, and that's fair enough, because it can be quite intimidating. It's difficult to get it right, and but when we do get all the pieces come together, we can have scrums like that, which was quite a great scrum. Nigel there, I think it lasted for nearly a whole minute. They were pushing that around. So, I mean, at the end of the day, the purpose of a scrum, especially for us when we're doing community refereeing, amateur rugby, community refereeing, kids rugby, middle school, high school, it's really just to restart the game quickly, safely, and there should be a fair competition to compete for possession of the ball, right? So that's law 19. That's in the law there. That's how they state it. Quickly, safely, and fairly. So that's what we're going to try to figure out how to do tonight. Obviously, we've got the front row is our main concern. Tight head prop. Number 3, they bind over the loose head, right? Their arm goes over the top of the loose head, right hand side of the scrum, between the opposition hooker and the loose head. That's where they slot on in. and usually their role is to stabilize the scrum. They're the bigger of the three usually, and they make the big money in the professional game because they are very difficult to move. So that's their role, generally speaking, is to be the anchor of a scrum. They like to twist and cause a bit of trouble there with a loose head by lowering their left shoulder. So there's some things that you can, think about when you're dealing with a tight head prop, what they're trying to do. They want to be nice and low. They want to try to get nice and low. Their job's to stabilize the scrum, and they can cause a bit of trouble by twisting a bit or dropping their left shoulder. Loose head prop on the other side there. Backs down on the left-hand side of the scrum. Lefty loosey, righty tighty, I like to do to figure out what's going on there. Goes on the outside of the tight head, prop their head. We want them to stay nice and close to their hooker. As a referee, that helps. And they usually try to scrum upwards rather than downwards like a tight head prop would. So they're going to try to get up and under that tight head and disrupt the scrum that way. Underneath, lift up, and usually go across the face of the scrum is what a loose head prop will be doing. And then, of course, the person in the middle, the hooker, this is all pretty generic, straightforward stuff, right? I like to deal with the hooker at the scrum because they're usually the ones that set the scrum up. They're the manager of the scrum. They usually set the height of the scrum. They help stabilize the scrum before it is engaged. And, of course, they strike for the ball. Defensively, they're going to work with their loose head to apply as much pressure as they can to the opposition tight head. So that's sort of the general roles of our front row. Any thoughts around that? Any questions around that? Speak freely. It's okay. Yep.
Thank you. I'm kind of lost on the body mechanics of the tight head dropping his left shoulder in order to apply torsion, because so he's dropping his shoulder in order to apply pressure on the, because he's bound to his hooker with his left shoulder, right?
Yes, yeah. Maybe did I put that in there wrong?
So
It may be wrong. There was a cut and paste on my part there. Sorry. Tighty props on the right hand side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
it'd
it's a
be
slide
dropping his
before
right.
this. Okay.
Yeah, it'd be dropping his right shoulder. I apologise. I'll go and I'll fix that. Yeah, good catch there. Yeah, good catch. I put that there on purpose, and you won the award. Well done, paying attention.
That's why I'm the chair of the society. Well, practice.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good catch. Anything else that popped up there that we want to talk about before we move forward?
I love your point about dealing with the hooker, because that really is like they tend to be the most easily talked to person. Not that they're sensible, but you can at least have a conversation.
Yeah. I mean, look, I find that it's around the scrum, the more of a relationship you can build with the people involved, the better it is for you during the game. So it's about building some rapport, like before the game starts. When we have, and we'll talk about our pre-match stuff, but before the game starts, it's a really good time to go and talk to the front row, build some rapport, let them know that you're there to facilitate the scrum for them, and get some buy-in from them before the game starts. And that can really help you, during the game when we have to start making decisions or adjusting, on the fly.
Hey, I've got just a thought regarding the front row, and this is something that somebody told me a long time ago when I first started refereeing.
Okay, who's talking here? Hey,
I'm sorry, this is Troy.
Name,
this is Memphis.
Troy. Hey, okay.
What's up, Scotty?
Hey, Troy, how you doing, mate?
Good.
Good.
Yeah, something, just kind of an adage that I've adhered to for a long time, and I understand things better now than I did at first, obviously, but I was told that if things start going screwy in a scrum, more often than not, it's the defensive loose head that's screwing things up, that's screwing with it. And that's the first place to look when you're trying to figure out how to get things sorted out. And I never
Yeah.
knew what that meant specifically, but it always just kind of stuck with me. And I was just wondering how true that is, and how much that holds up, just as kind of a general line of thinking.
Yeah, well, I mean, I wouldn't say when, or I think you said if it's more like when it gets a bit screwed up. So it's definitely going to happen. I think the loose head, I don't think one player more than any other player is going to cause you trouble. You know, I mean, I've had scrums where they've all been causing an issue. I think the loose head though has the most freedom in a scrum because he's not bound in. You know, he can kick out quite nicely. So he's on the outside of the scrum. The loose heads are on the outside. They can kick out and drive across. So they have quite an easy way to relieve pressure, if that makes sense. So
yeah.
On the outside of the scrum, when we're looking at it, if the tight head's beating the loose head can step out quite easily and relieve all sorts of pressure on him, and then just push across. Right? If the loose head can't go push forward towards the goal line, he can step his feet out and push across, and it's a lot easier for them to win the battle. So that's probably where that has come from.
All right.
That you're saying that, you know, look at your loose head, and we'll talk about more about problem solving later on, as we get through this stuff, Troy. So yeah, we'll address that and come up with some sort of a game plan around dealing with unruly front row players. So yeah, but anyway, that's just a basic overview of their positions and you know, some of their responsibilities. The next thing we'll jump onto is the body position, and you know, as a referee, we can get a lot of information by looking at how a prop's set up, and we can, you know, ascertain whether they're in a dominant position or whether they're in a weak position, just by that side-on view. Like here, looking at the picture there, that side-on view can tell us quite a lot about what might happen next, based on the body position. Are they in a strong body position? And here you can see, you know, the ideal body positions. The stick figure thing here, like 110 degrees, is about where they want to be, and the line between the shoulder at the top here, at the top of the red, and down to their feet, it should intersect the knees, and that gives you a fair idea if they're in a good body position. If they lack flexion in the knee, they're going to be weak, or they get too much flexion, they're liable to go to ground. So that's what we want to look for. Strong body position, 90 to 120 degrees of flexion at the waist and the knees. And this is quite a good shot from Super Rugby back in the day. I mean, they're basically perfectly set up. Spine in line, the head is neutral, and that's showing us that they're in a nice strong position to engage a scrum there. The last two should have been taken off there, sorry. So we're strong there, and then compared to a weak, there's minimal flexion, head on chest, you know, they're sort of compacted in that way, and if they're twisted, all these are signs of a weaker position. Any thoughts around that? Fairly straightforward there.
There's the one thought I had on that is that Ian, you were talking about, I think it's you. It's either you or Ben, just talking about like dealing with problematic scrums at lower levels, and really frequently what I'll see is they'll have the biggest kid on the team as the prop, and they'll come in, and the biggest kid on the team will go like this, and he'll have his shoulders below his hips, and that's explicitly like everywhere. It's in the laws and game management guidelines, but you still see this kid in the front row. And and when I first started refereeing, I wanted everybody to play rugby. Like what, I'm here to facilitate the game. I'm gonna coach the kid. I don't do that anymore. I just tell the coach, like, this kid can't scrum. Like, we need somebody who's trained.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think what we find in those scenarios is that just because a person has a large frame does not mean they have the core strength to be in those positions, and that's really what it's all about. I mean, it's having the strength from the knee up through the core to be able to hold that position. But yeah, that's a great cue. When, like Ben, when you were saying, when you're dealing with some of these younger people playing rugby at the scrum, when they come and set up, and as soon as you say crouch, these are some things that you can look at. So you're looking from the side, you're side on. When you're looking at the two props, and you're looking at their body position. I go back to, here. If you look at a prop and he's in that, got that nice flexion at the knee and the waist, you can assume he's in a good strong position. But as soon as that knee straightens or the knee goes too close to the ground, it's a good cue to be like, blow your whistle, hey, we're going to stand up. Or if you do continue through with the scrum, that you'd want to keep an eye on those props. So it's just a visual cue to have when you're going through the process. Now, if you have a situation where you've got props that maybe aren't trained, which happens all the time in high school rugby. I did a game last week, a high school game of rugby, and out of the 30 players on the field, 26 of them had never played rugby before. So, you're always going to come across situations where there are players in the front row and in the scrum and all over the field that don't really understand what they're doing. Now, we can't just blow the whistle and say we're not going to do this today. So sometimes we are in the role of coach, referee, and all the various positions. So, it's just being aware of what's a strong position, what looks weak. Maybe you coach them through it a bit. Maybe if all your props are unable to hold a good position, then you go uncontested scrums. But just some things to think about there.
Hey, Scott, Jeff kind of just reminded me.
Yeah.
When you've got one prop who's really tall, this happens all the time for some reason to me. A really tall
Yeah.
prop and a really short prop, and so that when they're crouching, they're not lined up perpendicular to the field, if you like, to the touch line.
Yeah.
There's an angle. So you've got this big gap on one side of the scrum and a how do you deal with that?
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough, mate, that one. I mean, what I would do is I would try to manage it in a way where I would bring the team that gets lower to the ground up a little bit and try to get the team that's higher down just a little bit. Try to meet somewhere in the middle. I mean, that's really all you can do. I mean, there's not a whole lot of options.
Yeah. I mean, I remember one game there was just this massive guy propping and he was doing a good job, but he was screwing up the scrum because he was such a different size to everybody else. It was really hard to.
For sure.
Because he wasn't doing anything wrong, but yeah.
Yeah, it's very tough. I mean, yeah, it can be quite a challenge, especially at the lower level games where people aren't physically strong enough. They're under trained or under prepared. The size difference, especially in high school. I mean, some people grow, get the growth spurt early. Some kids don't get it at all. It's just that's why you get paid the big bucks to be referees, right?
Yeah.
Okay, scrum process. So let's talk a little bit about before the match, and maybe because we've got such a small group tonight, we could actually just open up our mics and have a chat about this. Let's go through our pre-match, and maybe we just go through the group. Who wants to share? If you know off the top of your head your pre-match, and let's see what we think as a group about our pre-match scrum talk. So you rolled up to the field, you've said hi to everyone. Now it's time to talk to your front row. What are we saying? What are some things we want to be saying?
One of the first things I do is make sure everyone's been trained or experienced in that position.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah. And by trained and experienced, what's your parameters for that?
It can vary. I've been did some high school stuff last year where there was basically I knew Basically, nobody was. We had maybe 100 kids playing their first game of rugby on a single day one time, and so it's hard to say. Some of the college levels, I would expect, maybe a year they played, or 2-3 games to be called really experienced as the level sort of steps up. But yeah, high school's always still a problem.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So you sort of do a quick take a quick note to see how experienced, or the experience level, what you're dealing with. That's smart. And I mean, you can do that in many different ways. What else are we doing for our pre-match talk? Who would like to go through their talk? Say, just pretending that I'm on the front row. I've rolled up. You rolled up to me. Just give me your front row. Someone give me your front row talk. Who wants to have a go at it? There's no wrong, no right. Anyone? No one?
I'm just trying to remember the last time I actually did that. I've gotten to the point where I'll just have a quick word with both the front rows at the same time at the first scrum in the game. And that way,
Okay. Yeah.
I used to do the pregame chat, and sometimes that would happen 20, 30 minutes, maybe more before actual kickoff. And then when you get that first scrum, who knows if they retained any of it.
Sure. Yeah.
So, and I don't know if that's right or wrong or good or bad, but that's just kind of a habit I've developed, is just to have a really quick chat, 10 seconds at the first pack down. And that way,
right,
it's fresh, and they're all 6 right there, and they're all hearing the same information.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. Yep. So Troy's like, no, I'm not going to say anything before the match. Anyone else do a classic front row speech that they want to share? If you do, just unmute, have a go at it.
So I actually give a whole team speech for most levels below, the top of Pacific Northwest. Like if I'm talking to a D2 men's, if I'm talking to high school, I'm gonna talk to the whole team. And the first thing I always say is, if you got something to say it to your captain. Flip side is, if I'm talking, it's because I don't want to call a penalty. And then I'll talk about, here's my I'm going to say crouch. I'm going to wait for everybody to be level. I'll say bind, wait for everybody to bind. Then I'll say set. And when I say set, then you can engage. And that's just, parroting the laws to them. But that's basically it. Like I'll go through what's required, and then once I'm done with that, then I say, any questions. Somebody will say when this ball is out, and I'll tell them to go read the law book, and not really, but
yeah.
But yeah, I mean but when I'm talking to when I do like Seattle, topside versus a BCRU team, then I'll call over the scrummy, and I'll call over the front rows, and I'll say basically the same thing, crouch, bind, set, and then scrum half, don't mess with your opponent at the scrum, because that's a particular pet peeve of mine. And if you want to take it quick, make sure I see.
Okay. So anyone else want to share what they say to the front rows before we move on? I think it's, look, obviously this is an area where you get sort of to pick what you want to say. I mean, when I first started refereeing, my referee coach, Callum Pendler, gave me this whole page to memorize. It was like a speech, and it just went on and on and on. And I worked pretty hard memorizing that. And by the time I'd figured it out, memorized it, they changed it and said, no, you don't say anything. Now you say this, now you say that. So I think it's just a good time for me personally. I always talk to the front rows before the match, because I use that time to build rapport with the players. Some key players in your team, they're all in the front row. So I use that time to make eye contact with the props and sort of humanize myself a little bit, which I think is really important, and build as much rapport with the front row as I can, right? Because I find when I have a good day at the scrum, it transfers really well through the rest of my game because it's a high pressure situation. So if I do well at the scrum in a game, the rest of my game seems to just naturally flow on a little bit better. There's a bit more flow for me. I feel a little bit more at peace. When I'm having a hard day at the scrum, the rest of my game seems to be difficult. So I put a lot of energy before the game to talk with the front rows, get rid of some of my anxiety and nerves, and humanize myself, and maybe crack a few jokes and get some basic information out, which is I need you to be balanced and in control of your body weight. Okay, because we need that from the front row. You've got to control your body weight. And now we need to make sure there's space between the two front rows, right? We can't have the actual loading because that's very dangerous, and it's been, now against the laws of the game, which is when they go head on shoulder. So I like to make sure they understand. I just need you guys to be balanced, and I need to make sure there's space until I call set. And that's basically it for me. I try not to get too technical with the law. Because as Troy was saying, they don't even really want to listen to you, or by the time you get to your first scrum, they may have forgotten. So I try to keep it brief and touch on a couple of key points that I will reiterate through the rest of the game. So every time I have a scrum, I'm always going to say balance and space, please, boys or girls. Next scrum, balance and space, please. And I always go back to those 2 points because for me, if I can get them controlling their body weight, we have a better opportunity to have a good scrum. And you talked about this earlier, Ben, where before like just getting them to sort of slot in and stay up and stability. It's all about what we do at the beginning of the scrum more than what we do at the end. So if we set the scrum up well at the beginning, we're going to have more likelihood of it being successful for the rest of the match. So this is Greg Gardner. He's just recently retired from the RFU a few years back, and I believe he was running maybe the Pro 14 or one of the Scottish leagues out there. But this is his pre-match speech. And for someone who's starting out as a referee, I think this is really good because it touches on all the key points. It's really short. It's easy to memorize if you want to. And then another good thing about this clip is you watch how disinterested the front rows are. So we'll play this. Yeah, as I said, practice what you're going to say, memorize it, so you don't look too nervous. Clear and concise, short and sweet. Sorry, can you hear the audio on that, peeps?
No.
No. Yeah, no.
There's no audio coming through, huh? I don't know how to resolve that, sorry.
When you click the button to share, there's a checkbox for share by computer audio. So unshare.
Share sound, sorry. Yes, there we go. And optimize video for video clip.
Yeah, do both those.
There we go. Do both of those. Okay, awesome. Thanks for that. Okay, let's try that.
Okay, lads, for scrum, so the first thing I'll do, I'll make a mark on the pitch. Hooker, go to the left of the mark, please. Okay, when we're ready, I'll start to engage the scrum. So first thing I'll call crouch.
Can we hear that?
We're at the same height and we're balanced.
Yes.
Once I'm happy that we're all balanced, I'll call bind. Props, make sure you bind in the right places on your opposite number and hold that bind. When all 4 props are bound and I'm happy that both packs are stationary and balanced, I will call set. Please make sure you engage the scrum after I've said set. Once the scrum's engaged, we need it to be stationary and square, and then we can put the ball in. Are there any questions?
Okay, yeah. Hopefully that came through all right.
Yep.
Any thoughts on that one?
No, that's good. Short and concise too.
I think they hit all the points, and super quick. So yeah, my
Short and
advice
sweet
would be
is
just,
nice.
yeah. Well, my advice would be come up with something. Maybe write it down, practice it a few times, so you sort of come across like you know what you're talking about. Stand in front of the mirror, practice it. Don't expect too much feedback from the front rows. They're pretty stingy with their feedback before the match, and but yeah, you just want to hit your main points.
Didn't there used to be a requirement in law for like certain points that the referee had to hit in the pre-match chat?
I think that may be like an urban myth, to be honest, because I don't recall seeing it, and but I mean, everyone does it, so but I mean, whatever we decide to do, it just comes back down to making sure that we keep everyone safe. So whatever you want to say in order to promote safety, keep the kids safe, so they can go home.
I totally agree. The only reason I asked is that I really thought that there was a requirement. I could have sworn there was, but when I go look at the law, there's not.
Yeah, look at the law book.
And,
I don't think there is. I don't think
there's not now. But the law book, if you ask John Clavin, he'll tell you that the law book hasn't changed. But
Well, if you believe anything that John Clavin says about refereeing, then you're a fool.
So I think
right?
when they
Do we all agree? Do we all agree? Yes, they all agree, John. You're a fool. No, we all love John. We love John. Okay, right. The Scrum process. Now, for me, this is where the gold is in developing a process around the Scrum. This can help us get out of all sorts of situations and get some really good outcomes, which is what it's all about. Yeah. So for me, this was probably the number one thing that I did for my refereeing that helped me the most, and not just at the Scrum, but for any set piece, the line outs, the breakdown, having a really good process that I can follow over and over again when I'm fatigued, when I'm under stress. It's really quite helpful. So, obviously a process, it's a series of actions or steps taken in order to achieve a particular end, which is very helpful at the Scrum. We start at getting the players together, we make our mark, and then we can start a process. What are some keys to developing a successful process? They have to be actionable and they have to be non-negotiable. So let's go through a Scrum process and see if there's anyone that would like that has a Scrum process already, that's been riffing for a while. If you have a process, if you'd like to share it, or we can go ahead and sort of maybe develop one on the call tonight. Is there anyone who has a Scrum process that they use regularly? No, I'll take the silence as a no. Troy, maybe?
Well, yeah, somewhat. But going back to something that Ben said, it kind of varies from situation to situation based on what I'm dealing with from an experience level, a size difference, who looks like they need a little bit more help than the other. And I consistently find myself having to tell the loose head to get that right shoulder out from underneath his hooker, because for some reason it always kind of creeps back in there and gets tucked in there. And it just helps with everybody squaring up along the front, to get that right shoulder out.
Well, how do you know to look at the loose head for him to that he's tucking his shoulder anyway? Like what triggers you to look at a loose head shoulder? Is that not in itself going through your internal checklist? When you check your front row players to see are they aligned properly? That's part of a process that you'd go through, right? You'd say crouch. You'd make a mark. Let's say you'd say crouch. What do we want in the crouch? We want to make sure that players are aligned and they go into their space, right? So in your process, that would be step one, alignment, crouch, and you're going to go through that. You're going to have a look. Now, let's say you've said crouch and the hookers go head to head. What do you do now, Troy? What are you going to be doing?
I blow the whistle and say, no, stand up, guys, here's what we're going to do. And I'll start from the beginning. I walk in, like I said earlier, I usually say something at the first scrum down. So I walk in, say, gentlemen, I'm going to set the mark parallel to the touch line. I want each hooker on the left side of it. That'll help. That'll help keep the proper spacing, right? And I want everybody ear to ear. I don't want heads on shoulders, and I want everybody square and hold your balance.
Right. So let's go through that. So we've set our marks. That would be number one in our process at the scrum. First thing we do, we set a mark. Players come together, they bind up, and we say crouch. So that would be, let's say that's step number 2. We're going to a crouch. What do we want to see when we say crouch? What are we looking for when we're looking at the scrum?
I'm looking for shoulders above hips and square shoulders. And that's when I will typically notice if the loose head's right shoulder is tucked or not.
So we're looking to make sure that the players are in their space and that they're square with the touch lines. And let's say we will look at to make sure their head's above their hip. So in my process, it would be the same. So I would say crouch. I go through, I look at all those things. Now, if one of those things isn't there, I'm not going to carry on to my next step because more than likely I'm going to have an issue. So as you said, Troy, you'd blow your whistle, you'd stand them back up. Maybe you explain to them, I just ask you to go into your space. Please don't go head on head. Go, ear to ear or what have you. So let's say you've gone through your crouch. You're happy with the fact that they're square, they're in their space, and their positioning's good. You tick that box. The next one we go to, obviously, is our bind. What are some things that we want to look at for our bind? Referees, any thoughts about the binds? Let's say, what are we looking for?
I'm looking for that there's still that space with the heads aren't on shoulders.
Yep, space, good.
And
what else are we looking for binds? Yeah,
because quite often they don't know how to bind. Again, I'm talking about high.
Yes.
So their arms are all over the place, or there's one guy trying to, so sometimes I'll even kind of adjust it on the fly, just kind of grab a hand and put it where it should be. Good.
I like that. You know what, Jeff? You got to get Ben off these high school games, mate. He's having a hard time with the scrums.
No, I love it.
It's not. You do. Yeah.
Unfortunately, we only have so many options in Bend. I mean, Bend is down in Central Oregon. It's not like we have a ton of things to put them on.
Yeah. No, that's good, Ben. Carry on. So we've got to the bind. I like that you're looking to make sure the space is still there, and we're checking the binds. And ticking those boxes. So as far as the binds go, I mean, I just make sure that we try to get them off the shoulder and get a good grab on the jersey.
Yeah.
And we can debate legal, illegal binds all day we want to, but the idea is in the process is that when you say bind, you've got a nice little checklist that you can go through. So I've still got my space, I've still got my stability. The binds are legal. Let's just say that's a good one. And then when we're happy with all that, the next step in our process is to go invite them to set and we'll engage. Yep. So, and then what are we looking for on the set for the engagement?
So obviously they come together. I'm looking that it's stable.
Sure.
That they're not, the red team's not pushing blue back before the balls come in.
Yeah.
And yeah, I guess that they're just sitting there really. Still with
stability.
Yeah, stability.
Your stability is really important, and I think it just being patient when you go through your steps when you're from crouch all the way through to set. It's just about being patient, not rushing it, making sure you're getting what you need from the players, and having those non-negotiables. So if a player's going to play games with their heads and they're going to knock heads, for me that's a non-negotiable. I'm just going to blow the whistle. I'm not going to carry on through it. If a prop binds on the shoulder, like the classic tight head prop where they will bind on the shoulder and they'll push them back, that's a non-negotiable again for me. I just blow the whistle and I'm not going to have it. You know, so it's about just having a nice process, having some non-negotiables in there, because by the time once the ball goes into the scrum, there's not a lot we can do as a referee apart from make a decision, right? So it's sort of, you know, the setup is where we can give ourselves the best chance of having a successful scrum. Once the ball goes in, we're just observing at that point and making decisions. So that's for me is gives me the best opportunity to get ball out, which is what we want, because at the end of the day, the scrum's there to be a quick restart, right? It's a restart. It should be quick and it should be a fair competition. We don't want to be going through and resetting and having issues or going wrong. In here, I just say own the setup, which is what we just talked about. You know, just take full control of it. Don't feel bullied into making, you know, going through with a setup that's not quite right. Be patient. Have your non-negotiables. One word, one action. When I say crouch, I want you to crouch into your space. When I say bind, I want you to bind legally. And when I say engage, I want you to hit and hold. And then down there, just don't move on to the next step until you're ready and happy with what you're seeing there. Any questions around that? Around the setup and the process of the setup?
Where do you, which side of the scrum do you prefer to stand?
If there's a camera, I try to block the feed from the camera, so my referee coach doesn't yell at me for the not straight feeds. So usually I would start with the halfback in the beginning of the game. I'm usually going to start with the halfback, and then you just have to make a decision based on what you're seeing and what's happening at the scrum on where you're best to stand. So I don't think there's any right or wrong way. I think there's some smarter places to be, depending. You don't really want to get jammed up against the sideline if you can help it, but usually I just go to where the issue is, and most often I will find myself on the defending tight head is usually where I set up for my scrums. Once I'm happy that the halfback's feeding the ball properly, or if I have ARs that are there to help me, I will go infield or on the defending tight head. Okay, this is just a quick checklist for your scrums. You're making your mark. Make sure your props are square. We've talked about that. Make sure the gap's there. Binds are legal. Set the scrum. You want them to get steady before the ball goes in. Now the halfback can feed the ball when they're ready, but the scrum still has to be steady. So if your halfback puts it in too quick and the scrum's still moving, you do have the option to free kick them for that. Then you'll be watching the feed, and then hopefully, if you get it all right, we have a nice scrum.
Platform here, being able to get this ball into the clear. So Austin Hans, a shout out to their supporters watching at Nasties, and a birthday as well for Harold Hoffman, one of their players and sponsors as well. Sinking a few jaws while their team go here.
Hopefully, when it all comes together, you have a decent scrum like that.
Quick question.
Yes.
Where do you like to see your hookers laying their feet?
So when you make a mark, they should line up to the left of the marks there.
Okay.
Yeah. Is that what you're asking? Yeah.
Rather than toe to toe.
Yeah. Look, I mean, yeah. Rather than toe to toe, look, I put the mark down. And usually what will happen is one hooker will go to the mark and he'll stand there, and then the other hooker will turn up. Then one hooker's going to move a little bit. Then the other hooker's going to say he moved. And then the other hooker's going to say, no, you moved. And everyone complains. And it's quite entertaining to watch two grown men fight over a mark on the ground. So, I make the mark, and, I'd say within reason, they're going to go where they want to go for the most part. And as long as the scrum's staying square and it's steady before the ball comes in, I try to limit my interference with what they do. So, but I think if I was coaching a newer referee around the scrum, it's just easy to say make the mark and ask the hookers to sit to the left of it. That's sort of the standard approach.
Sometimes I'll be as specific as saying I want the hooker's right foot to the left of the mark, just to ensure that they're staggered properly. And then knowing that they're going to fudge that, but it just kind of sets an early standard that they'll encroach eventually. And I don't know if that's right.
Yeah, I mean,
I found myself doing.
Usually, what I find if I'm having issues, sort of like I call that like little minor issues like that at the scrum, I put it all back on the players themselves. I'll say, if you have an issue with your opposition where he's setting up, then ask him nicely to move. That's what I say. Use I statements. Tell him how you feel. I feel, and it's it's quite effective. So you put it back on them. Say, you two sort it out, because you. This is what it's all about. You sort it out. You don't want me to be involved too much. So, I try to limit my involvement. But then again, if I have to be aware that if you're dealing with 13 or 14-year-olds, the way you deal with them is going to be a lot different than if you're dealing with 30-year-olds. So that's where you just have to use your common sense and figure out what works best in those situations. You may have to be very direct with some players, like as you said, Troy. Put your right foot there. Don't move it until I tell you to.
Yeah, I should have mentioned too. That was the caveat. That typically happens at the lower grades, the more inexperienced high school and stuff.
It's like when you're if
I'm doing men's D1, I say a lot less because I expect them to.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I mean, it's like when you're doing a game of high school rugby and you say hands away and everyone drops the ball, even the attacking team. And you got 30 kids just standing there going, what do we do now? I'm like, no. Well, I was just talking to this guy. Sorry. Yeah. They take it quite literally.
Are you gonna go further into talking about the throw in and everything too? I didn't want to jump going into that.
What, you talking about the feed at the scrum?
Yeah, the feed at the scrum. Yeah.
Yeah, we can do it. What would you like to know about it?
So, just to put it in perspective, like Jim's on here and he's watched me before and he kind of corrected me. So I'm 6'7". So trying to see where the feed is going, I kind of tend to kneel down and kind of look over. And Jim told me nobody wants to look at my butt. So I was just trying to figure out what's the best way to stand at the scrum so that you can see the feed, you can see that the hooker's feet aren't out early, you can see that it goes in straight. And then additionally, how important is it to go in straight? Because I watch a lot of different throw-ins where it seems like they're just throwing it directly to their side and it's not being called.
Yeah. I don't know if I want to even touch that subject. It sounds like Jim's being a bit pedantic. Jim, what's going on, Jim?
You don't want to touch his butt?
Yeah, I haven't seen this butt. What's wrong with your butt? What's so wrong with this backside, Jim? Tell me what's wrong with this backside.
My argument is that he can see the feed. Take a half a step back, and you can see the feed from there.
So what's your advice to your advice to him is if you want to see more, step back a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, I mean that's fair advice. Regardless of how I feel personally about the feed, that advice is great. And we actually talked about this last night, didn't we, Jeff? Around your perspective by stepping back a little bit from the breakdown. You actually gather a lot more information. We tend to get really close and we think the closer I get as a referee, the better I'm going to do. But sometimes stepping back is the way to do it. Now, my personal thoughts on a scrum feed is this. This is how I justify the scrum feed. If I have enough time, if I can go through a scrum setup and deal with and keep all the kids safe in a scrum and still have time to worry about a feed, and on top of worrying about the feed, decide to reset a scrum because the feed's no good or give a free kick, then I'm having a pretty good day at the office. So I tend to think that the scrum feed for me is the bottom of my list. So I go through all my checklists at the scrum, whether the feed's straight or not is the bottom of my list of things I'm worrying about. Now, that doesn't mean I'm going to let a player just chuck it grossly under the feet, or give it to the 8-man. Though I have told halfbacks before to give the ball directly to the 8-man because, we just want to get on with the game. There's certain situations where I think the feed of a scrum is really, really important. And that's close to the goal line, I think, for obvious reasons, both ways, attacking or defensive. Then the referee coach is going to say, well, you should be consistent throughout the whole game, which I understand where they're coming from. However, for me, I think the feed, it's a minor issue for me. It's a minor issue because, as you said, the 6'7" guy, I didn't get your name, sorry. As you said, it's everyone does it. You know what I mean? I mean, the way the law's written now is that the halfback can literally stand, at his prop's feet, because no one really wants to see reset scrums, free kick scrums. We need to get the game going. So that's my 2 cents on a feed.
Yeah, that's helpful perspective because, I mean, for me, I tend to be black and white more so than anything.
True.
So I'm kind of one of those kind of guys. So that's good perspective to look at it. If it's not just absolutely blatant, then let it go.
The piece I would say to you is to keep in mind what the scrum is for, and that's to quickly restart the game in a way that has a fair contest for each side. But it's not supposed to be an even contest. It's supposed to be a fair contest. And the real contest is not in who's able to like grab that ball the fastest. It's a scrum it's a pushing contest. So as long as there's a contest there, let it go.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Kevin, have I stopped sharing my screen? Oh yeah, okay. Yeah, I can see your faces now. Sorry, it was a bit clunky. I haven't used this keynote program in such a long time, but I think around the 9 feed. Look, I think it's something that as you start refereeing, a referee coach is always going to bring it up because you need to understand all the laws of the game, and a referee coach needs to know that you're aware of the laws. So they may ask you to deal with something like feeding the scrum. So we know that you're aware that it's a law and that law is being infringed upon. Once we understand that you're making a conscious decision to either ignore it or not, then most referee coaches will move on from that point and be like, okay, we get it now. Okay, anything else we want to talk about the scrum? That's really sort of the basic setup, the basic presentation here. Is there anything else that we'd like to chat about?
I was just curious. This is Durward again. Sorry, I just had a quick question on that presentation that you did. That you have all those pieces together. Is that something that you can share with all of us as well? That was
absolutely, yeah.
I'm going to cheat and show it to my players that we're coaching as well.
I was I actually have a presentation. In the presentation mode, I have all my notes. I just couldn't find I don't know how to set this this keynote up to share my screen and have the presentation notes as well. So I was going through it a little bit blind. But yeah, anything else around the scrum we want to talk about? I mean, while we're here, we might as well chat.
One thing for clarification for me,
fed the ball and whatnot, and then something goes wrong. The scrum collapses.
Yeah.
How do we decide who to penalise?
Yeah, good question. How do we decide? If it's not clear and obvious, maybe we just don't penalise.
What should we be looking at?
The hardest thing for me to do in a scrum is when I say set and it goes to ground straight away. It's very difficult to be like, who did what? It's very easy for someone to sit back with a video clip and rewind and go, oh yeah, it's a loose head, mate. Look at that. Oh, he's hinging. But live, it's extremely difficult, especially if it's your third reset or the scrum's been it's been tough. So that's why I say you build your process up, right? Develop a process that's super tight, so you can go right, and have your non-negotiables have to be, when I say crouch, I want to see that body shape. I want to see you in that space. I want to see you balanced. I want to make sure the 8-man's not, pulling back. I want to make sure the locks aren't putting any pressure through yet. So, you have more chance of the scrum not. I'll say this. I think the scrum probably collapses more often because we didn't set it up as good as we could have. So maybe, because that's the only thing we can control, and we can't control what happens when they go set together. Because it could be anything. It could be cheating, right? The props could be cheating.
Yep.
It could be an equipment malfunction. The jersey, when they grab the jersey, it stretches out and they lose their footing. It could be that the hook, the lock's pushing too hard on a prop who doesn't know what he's doing. It could be not strong enough. We don't know. It's not, there's not a simple answer. Why does it go down? What can I do? I think all we can do as referees is give the setup the best opportunity. And I think we do that by having a good, strong process, getting the height right, getting the space right, getting the balance right, and using those first handful of scrums in a game to set that standard, and not going forward, just non-negotiables. You've got to back yourself and say, like, if he's at a slight angle, it's not good enough. If they're head on head, it's not good enough. Or if the bind's doesn't look right, I'm not going to go forward. And maybe putting a little bit more emphasis around the setup early in the game, you'll have better results throughout the game. Because we all have to guess at some point who did what. I mean, that's what happens in Major League Rugby. We only have 2 scrums, and I have to make a decision on the second scrum, regardless. Even if I don't know who did what, I've got to make an educated decision and be like, I think it was him. And if there's anyone here who's been in the front row before as a player, that's not what you want to hear from the referee. Oh, I think you did that. And he's like, So, for me, I put a lot of emphasis on the setup, getting the setup as clean as possible, in order to, to have a good outcome. Because really, otherwise, all you're doing is sort of going, you have to be like, who's cheating less?
Yeah.
Right? That's what it comes down to. Who's cheating less? Like, who's cheating, you're assuming that, both sides are doing something a little bit dodgy. So then we're like, okay, well, I think he's cheating a little bit more than he was cheating, so I'll give him the penalty. It can be a bit difficult. If the scrum keeps on going down, you can bring the height up. That's an option. Bring the height of the whole front row. I want you guys up higher. You can bring them closer to take away the impact of the engagement. There's some things you can do. Though sometimes it's just the fact that they're undertrained, underskilled, they're not strong enough, and they're tired. I mean, scrumming's hard work, and if you're in a high school game where every second phase is a knock on, you may have 30 scrums in a game, which is, that's a lot of work for a 14-year-old kid to do. If you get to a point where you're like, this is just a disaster, then you say, well, there's no pushing. Like, you can say this, you're allowed to go, I've given you people the chance to scrum. You've shown me that you can't scrum safely. Therefore, I'm going to take away the push, and you can earn back the right to scrum live again. You can earn that back from me. So you can take it away like you would with your children. I'm going to take away a privilege, and then you earn it back by going, when I say crouch, you crouch like we talked about, good body shape in the gap. When I say bind, you bind legal. You don't overlean. You don't put weight through early. And then, that would be how I would address it if I was having a difficult time around the scrum. Because at the end of the day, you have to think about this, Ben. God forbid anything happens and someone gets hurt at the scrum, they will come asking you the questions, and they'll be like, why did you allow this to happen? And I think if that you have to protect yourself, and because it's a dangerous part of rugby, it's a very dangerous part of the game, right?
Yeah, it's not. That's not protect. Well, it is protecting me, but it's protecting them, right?
Everyone. Yeah. No, you did right. I know that probably doesn't even help answer your question. It was sort of a sidestep there.
So let's say you've called set. You step out of the way or wherever, and what are you looking at right at that moment as the ball is being fed?
So when I say set, I'm going to make sure you want stability. That's the first key. No pushing, and I would be very vocal. Okay, so I'm assuming that you're doing high school rugby. I'm going to say crouch, bind. I'm happy. Set. They come together, and I'll be like, don't push. Don't push.
Yeah.
I would just be very vocal about no pushing. Steady. I'm like you, mate. I have no issue about putting my hands on a player. I will hold them and grab them, hold them back, push them, touch their elbows. That's just me. That's my nature. And once the ball goes in, you just have to watch for angles, right? Because that's what they're going to do. That's if you can't push. We talked about this earlier. If I can't push you forward, or straight on, the angle is the easiest way to beat you. So a loose head's going to step his feet out. You should be able to see it side on when you're looking at a scrum this way. A loose head will step, and it's quite obvious when a loose head steps out and around, right? As soon as you see that, you blow your whistle anyway. You go, that you're cheating. It's going to be dangerous, right? A tight head is going to angle in on the hooker, which can sometimes be a little bit harder to pick up. But the trigger there is if you're looking at the side of the scrum, I would pick one player. So if you're having issues at the scrum, if you try to look at everything, you're going to miss everything.
Yeah.
So what I do, if I'm having a bad day, we talked about this earlier, I stand on the defensive tight head, for me personally, and I watch him. So we come together. If I look at the defensive tight head, and he's ticked all his boxes, right? He's square. He's in a strong body position. His bind is legal, and he's pushing straight. And the scrum goes down. I can make an educated guess that it's the loose head who's put the scrum down, right? Because the tight head's done everything perfect. If I'm just watching the tight head, I'm ticking his boxes. So maybe you want to do it with the loose head. So you can say, right, I'm going to watch the loose head now. I'm having a hard day at the scrum. I don't understand why it's going down, but it's going down on that side. So you go to where the action is, and you're going to watch the loose head. Is he sitting right? Is he in that strong position that we showed? Is his back flat? Is he pushing straight? Is his bind good? Does he stay square? And if he's doing all that and the scrum goes running off to the far side of the pitch, you can safely assume that the tight head is angling across, and you can make a really smart decision. So try not to watch everything, because you'll miss everything, and you just have to go to one player. And when you're sitting at home watching rugby, get some scrums, get your video, and just watch the scrum and pick a player. And I would recommend doing it to the tight head. Watch the tight head and just go through your checklist on a tight head. What do you want him to do? Okay, you want him to hit up, hit square. We've talked about his body position, and just look at the scrum. Is he strong or is he weak? And then see what happens. Pause it, see what happens to that scrum. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
Yeah, look, the scrum can be very difficult. It can be a very difficult thing to get right. I think for me, I still struggle. Some games are better than others. I find you have to review a lot of tape, watch a lot of film, talk to front row players, and overall just be kind to yourself. You know what I mean? Because you're going to get it wrong, and it's okay. Because most referees in the world get it wrong. It's okay. You're not going to have a perfect day at the scrum where you go back and go, I got every single scrum, I nailed it. Or, so I think it's just about reviewing your match if you have a chance to, if you get film, and going, right, what part of my process did I miss? Maybe you didn't miss anything. Maybe you go, I got it all. I got the crouch right. I got the bind was good. I got the set was good, and it went down. Fine. But you find that you go through your scrums and go, oh, I didn't get enough stability in that scrum. They were moving around too much before, and I let them feed the ball in. Right. So then you can go, okay. So stability was the issue, and you go through your scrums. Like if you have 20 scrums in the day, in your match, you should be able to go down. Let's go alignment, and you should tick every scrum with a yes or no on alignment. Did I hold this front row accountable to my standard on every scrum? And you go down, and then you go to bind. Did I make them bind legally throughout the whole match? Yes or no? And then was there stability before the ball came in? Yes or no? And most of the time in my reviews, one or more will be missing, and I have a bad outcome. When I get all three right, most of the time the ball comes out and we can play rugby. The times when I have to reset or it goes to ground, I've either been too impatient or have not and not made them be stable. Just rush through the whole process because I'm under pressure, and when you're under pressure, you tend to rush. So it's about calming it down, nice and slow, stability, 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 stability.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah,
Scott,
if you have no luck, just become a soccer referee. There's no scrums in soccer. Do you know that? They don't even have scrums. You just stand there, and they pay you good money, and you just stand there. It's
so much easier.
It's an easy gig.
Well, yeah. But the players are going to get in your face and call you all kinds of crap.
Scott,
yeah,
I warned you last night that there's a certain point in the call where it's going to devolve into smack talk, right?
Yeah, name calling. Usually, that's what I say to when I'm reviewing a referee. I love to use that line where I say, have you thought about soccer? Have you thought about being a soccer referee? Just to build up their confidence. If you're doing a soccer referee, but look, yeah. Back to the scrum real quick. Just think about that. Just have a checklist. Try to review your matches. Try to get some footage. It's really helpful. And hold yourself accountable to that process, and you'll find that you get some really good success from that.
Well, that's something that you and I had talked about the other day. Is the importance of having a process. Not necessarily because it's set in stone, but because it's something that you can walk throughout the game. And then if you get film, then you can review it and say, did this process work at each of the steps? And if not, then you have an opportunity to refine that process.
Yeah, indeed. I think refereeing is very interesting. The fact that the way you train to be a referee is unlike being involved in a sports team where you get to go and hang out on a Thursday or Tuesday and Thursday, and yet you coach consistently, and you can have these pretend games. Refereeing, you're learning on the job. You do all your learning live on Saturday. And you get all this feedback and stuff. So it's about finding ways that you can upskill and train yourself during the week. And video review is probably the best tool we have. It's relatively easy to get now. I mean, if you don't have a partner, that's prepared to come out and hold your iPhone and film you. I mean, I'm sure you can give the neighbor kid $10 to do it. So, get some film, watch yourself, and, just hold yourself to a standard. I mean, that's really what it is. Like, have a vision of what you want to be as a referee and hold yourself to that standard.
Most of the teams these days are filming it. So all you got to do is reach out to the coaches and say, like, hey, can I get the video?
Exactly. Yeah, you did right.
And if you have the money, I've seen at least one referee with a GPS control video that would follow him around.
Yeah, we used to do that in Texas. We had the I forget what they were called.
Solo shot.
We used the little tracker. Yeah, the solo shot. We brought a whole bunch of those for the referees, and
we had real mixed success with them. We had a couple of them up here, but
yeah. No, I agree. We were the same. We sort of sometimes they worked really well, sometimes they didn't. It was sort of hit and miss. I don't know. It was the programming or the software.
It was early days. I'm sure it'll get better. Scott, what position did you play when you played? Do you still play rugby?
No, I don't play. I haven't played a game of rugby in 13 years, and I played on the back row, and and I find myself on the wing a lot, especially defensively. And then every once in a while I'd pop up at number 10. As a good back row, I should, right? But no, I played on the back of the scrum for most of my my career. I was in the front row when I first started back in New Zealand as a schoolboy. Then I got a little bit of a growth spurt, not a whole lot, but just enough to get out of the front row, but not enough to be in the second row. So it worked out pretty well.
Yeah, that's an ideal right there. Durward can agree with me. The second row is the worst position on the field.
Yeah, that's where you retire, right? You retire at the second row. Once they push you from the back row into the second row, you just retire.
I mean, unless you're Devin Toner, and then you're like, you have no choice. Like, this is where you're meant to be.
Yeah, exactly. Any other things around the scrum? Any other questions? Anything we haven't touched on?
I've got something that maybe this is just more of a game management thing, but oftentimes everything's great. The setup's good. The put in's good. And all of a sudden the ball starts coming out. It's underneath the 8-man. It's just about to come out. And then it goes to shit. It collapses.
Yep.
But hey, the ball's at the back. So when do you know to say, use it 9, the ball's available, let's get it out, let's play, versus blowing it up for safety because maybe there's something that needs to be addressed?
Yeah, I mean, my thought on that would be, if the ball's at the back, I'm always going to try to get it, use it as much as possible, because I think unless someone in the front row is being vocal about they're in danger, setting up another scrum. I mean, why go through the whole scrum process again if you're unsure why it went down in the first place? You might as well just use it, and then maybe at the next scrum you address it. I mean, there's nothing wrong with going to the front row and saying, "Hey, what happened there? At the last scrum, what happened?" I mean, I find the more you just talk to them like you would in any other situation in life, like, what happened there? Like, what's going on? Some front row players are going to be unreasonable. Oh, he's doing it, or they're doing it, or she's doing it. But I find overall that they can be quite reasonable and say, "Hey, what happened at the last scrum? Let's figure it out." I mean, most props will go, "Yeah, I did, my bind slipped." Yeah, and yeah, okay, cool. Or if there's a serious issue, they'll be a bit more vocal about it, and then just addressing it. I mean, I tell you, telling the props to speak to each other is really effective. I say, tell them how you feel, and they'll be, "I feel like you're taking up too much space." And I'm like, "Okay, did you hear what he said?" Okay, and then they get on with life. It's great. It works really well. I did it as a joke, and I use it all the time now. I'm like, use I statements and tell them how you feel. So
I'm so doing that.
Play away. I think play away when you can. If it's safe to play away, and then you just have to remember to address it at the next scrum. If it's a safety issue, but not every scrum that goes down is a safety issue. I mean, if you're dealing with a D2 group, and it's in the second half, it's a fatigue issue. It's a skill issue. You know what I mean? Half the people playing on these teams are working, 50 hours a week. They get to run around on a Tuesday a little bit, maybe on a Thursday. That they, they're not really in the shape to be scrumming like we see on TV for 80 minutes. So manage them early. You get some good scrums in early, and then just let them, at the end of the game, fatigue will set in, and there'll be a few more on the ground.
Yeah, I definitely err on the side of the ball's out. Let's use it. Let's go. But every now and then I second guess myself and think, man, what the fuck just happened up there? Do I need to address that?
So, the key is somebody gonna get hurt, right? Because if it's like this and it goes like this, nobody's gonna get hurt there. There's just nothing's gonna happen. So if the ball's already available, then go ahead. But when it goes like this, you gotta blow it up, and that's really the key. So even if they have the ball at the 8-man, as soon as it starts to collapse, you gotta blow it. But if they just both if the ball's already at the back and it goes down like this, then nobody in the front row is gonna change the outcome, right?
Right.
So safety is number one. Like absolutely all the time, safety is number one. It's a game. We don't want anybody to get seriously hurt. But the time that people get seriously hurt is not when it's like this. It's when it's like this.
Yeah. It's when when they're scrumming in the gutter, was they call it, just dirty stuff. I agree. Well, I think that's about all I have for you, Jeff and Co. In terms of the Scrum stuff, I will get that presentation off to you if you want to, Jeff, and you can use it as you see fit.
Absolutely, I will send that out along with the email of this video. Scott,
excellent.
Thanks a ton for taking some time pre-game to chat with us. We really appreciate it. This is super cool of you.
Yeah, mate. Yeah. Anytime, mate. I'm happy to get on the computer and have a chat if it's helpful. And I mean, as I said, just work your process, clean it up really nicely, get a real solid process. Watch some rugby on TV, watch the scrums, and see if you can identify what the players are doing, what the front row are doing. And then if you're having a hard day at the scrum, pick one player, one prop, focus on the one prop, tick their boxes, and if they're ticking all the boxes, you can make an educated decision on who's causing trouble. And that's the way I do it. So yeah, all the best out there, and we'll talk soon, hopefully.